from 16 Nahun and crossing across to Masonwabe Ntloko. One of our creatives, one of the people who are representing and doing really great things and collaborations out there. It's awesome to see, it's awesome to experience, and it makes us even more proud as time goes. Masonwabe, good morning. Thank you for joining us, my brother.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm easy, man. I'm easy. Happy to have you here. And obviously, we've got a bit to talk about as far as the things that you've been working on. Before anything, what drives this creativity? Where does it all come from for you?
That's a tricky question. But I think for me, it's just something that I've always just known that I was supposed. So basically, I don't know anything outside this. Like for me, this was my first and last option. So what drives it is, I think for me, creativity is who I am. I think creativity is who I am. I don't look at something separate from who I am, what I do, or how I function. So it's a tricky question to answer, because for me, like I said, I found out that creativity was creativity way after I was already doing what I'm doing, So like it's a new word. So yeah.
So recently, you did a collaboration with Rocking the Daisies at the Unforgettable Experience. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, how that came about, and what the response was? I'm sure just by looking at what you guys put together, there must have been a really good wave of support for that.
Mm-hmm. No, so for me, I think where we start this conversation is what I came in saying I wanted to do this year. My idea was to take the power of the creative and start dictating where my career should go. So instead of me waiting for people to call me, waiting for people to, I started being very intentional about where I was trying to go. So I was looking at, this now obviously means you need to learn about how to pitch, like writing pitch decks, doing this, doing that. So for me, that was a very important part of all of this. So eventually, obviously with natural progression, you start looking at the things that you would like to do outside of what everyone else does. So for me, I was like, you know what? I think something like a Rocking the Daisies collab would be nice, had conversations with the relevant people, and, it took a while. Then finally we found mutual and common ground. Then we started working together and we put this but it wasn't an easy process also, because remember, you're sitting there and it's like, okay, what you know and understand about Rocking the Daisies is from an outsider's perspective, So we grew up knowing that Rocking the Daisies was like a white people thing. So it's like, okay, how do you, when you have work that screams out, I am black, and no pun intended, I'm black and I'm proud,
Yes.
How do you take that and merge it with this, obviously they've changed their values now, it's not more or less the same thing that it used to be. Now it's much more inclusive. So I think that was the window that I used to go, okay, if it's inclusive, it means I should come as I am. So I shouldn't look at or overthink maybe this is what I should do, or this is how I should go about it. I was like, okay, this is what do I want to do? What language? What story am I trying to tell? And the best story to tell is the story of you and your people.
So, I mean, in a way, you also lended a hand in their internal transformation, because you've got very Afrocentric accents to all your work. So it screams that, and but the blend, it worked. I mean, this collab worked to the extent that one would think that it's a long-standing arrangement that's been there forever, So you say you've taken this. Well, hey, we're looking forward to something like that. So you said this is a year where you've challenged yourself to step into more intention. You must remember, when you do that, you leave the door open as well for a lot of disappointment, because when you are when you move with intention, there's not everybody who's going to understand that direction and that vision. but those who do are exactly meant to, and that's the cool part about it. So let's go. We're going to be jumping around from front to back because that's just the way that I prefer our conversations to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, how much does your origins influence the work that you do, and the direction of your creativity? Where is it that you're from, and how is it that it's affecting or infiltrating the work that you put out now?
Um, a few years ago, I was having a conversation with someone, and they're like, "Look, I need to find a sentence that best describes what I do." And the sentence that I came up with was, "I am a bridge of communication between what is and what was, but using today's visual languages to help explain all of this." So for me, obviously, like every other person, heavily influenced by what was in the media when I was growing up, which is
Yeah,
heavily hip hop. I'm like everybody. It's like I say this to people. I'm like, I'm a perfect balance of someone who grew up as Lalin and someone who grew up in town. Because every Friday we went to Lalin. Saturday you were losing home. Sunday same thing. Sunday evening or Monday morning back to town at Lokshin. So for me, I was I feel like I'm a perfect balance of all of these things. So it's easy for me to take from every aspect. Like, for example, I moved to Joburg. I came from a very small town, but I found a way not to fit in, but I found a way to adjust and be able to survive here. So I think for me, it's learning how to be in certain spaces, and this is obviously is like something that you learn from a very young age. Because for me, if
sure.
I'm in Joburg, I'm the person who I do Joburg things, not in a weird way, but like I mean I'm able to understand what's happening and act accordingly. So
Sure.
my work is really just influenced by everything that I've experienced. So it's heavily cultural, but the way in which it's communicated, it's a now way of communicating. It's like, yes, because for me, my biggest aim has always been to create from a point of adding to culture, not taking away from it. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, times have changed. How do we still speak on the same topic, but in a way in which hundreds of thousands of people will start looking at it and understanding it from a today's perspective? I don't know if I'm making sense.
You definitely do. I mean, in essence, anywhere you go, you've got to find a way to move.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to find your way to move in that area. You can't
Yeah.
you can't get to a place and disappear because you're not from there.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't add value to anything that one is trying to do.
True.
So we grew up. I guess I might be slightly older than you, but when I say we grew up in the Black African context, South African context,
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest prestige items, one that our mothers and the likes would collect would be these tapestries or the carpets or items that have a story. They'll tell you this came from this, but hardly ever did it happen that any of these items were actually curated or handcrafted by fellow Africans. It would be like Turkish this and so
Mm-hmm.
we used to benchmark off imported things to seem like that's how the important thing is. And then when I look at some of the creations that you have done on your carpets and those rugs, um, and what kind of feeling that invokes, it's kind of like that's what those were supposed to be like back then. What inspired that, and why did you take that direction? Because those pieces are beautiful.
Funny enough, when you create something, you're not really thinking about the impact that it will make. You know, I think for me that's always been the thing. Like I never predetermine the success of any product that I'm going to create or anything that I'm going to go into. It just feels natural for me to do it. So the way in which now the rugs are looked at and what they symbolize and what they stand for wasn't something that going into it I thought about. For me, I just was at a point in my life where I was like, okay, I'm tired of creating things, one-dimensional things. So me sitting there and going, okay, I draw. Okay, let me just draw on paper. For me, I was more interested in where can this work sit
Mm.
beyond just traditional thing of, oh, okay, I can do an art exhibition and put it on paper, you know. So for me, it was very important to sit there and go, okay, what can I do to challenge myself? And then one random day, I woke up and I was like, I'd make really good rugs, and started just because also for me, like, I think the most important thing that I've learned is what you think of yourself and where you think you can be. Those are the two things that are always right. So your intuition about who you
Sure.
are is what matters the most. So
Sure.
for me, like, I understood, like at that point when I was doing the whole rug thing, it's like even the guys that was doing the rugs with the Elung guys, they didn't really get where I was trying to go with it. You know, initially in the conversation where I'm like, hey, I understand that this is your understanding of rugs and you guys have had 50, 60 years of experience in the rug business, but this is what I want to do now. And it's a beautiful thing finding collaborators that are like, we don't get what you're saying, but we'll trust in you, because it's the
Sure.
hardest. Because my biggest problem right now is that I come into literally every room and I go, okay, this is what I want to do, and then someone who has some 30 years experience in the same industry is going to tell me that that's impossible. You know, now we have to go on a back and forth fight where I'm like, look, I get what you're saying, but realistically speaking, from my perspective, I understand that this thing is going to work. So, luckily, over time, when you start creating work, it starts becoming a thing that's more or less like now you become the guy that's known as, oh, okay, he's going to give us something different, and it's going to
Sure.
work. He
Sure.
understands himself, he understands his audience, and he understands the potential buyers that might not be part of his audience at this very moment. You know, because we are at an era where a lot of people are interested in knowing who they are. You know, they're interested in
Mm.
knowing who they come from, and there's a sense of pride that for a very long time wasn't there. You know, so for me, creating, going back now to the questions, just I digress a lot when I speak.
Ah, it's
Going back
okay.
going back to the question, the most important thing for me was just be true to yourself and create what you want. You know,
Yeah.
now obviously it will always be informed by what the consumer would want. But the most important thing for me, my spectrum of measuring how good something is if I like it. So if I sit there and I'm like, I don't like it never goes out. There's so much work that people will never see. You know, some of it gets recycled over time. Where it's like, okay, I see why this thing doesn't work then. Now let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, and then we put it together. But I think for me, like I said, I didn't really look at it from a point of this is what it was going to mean. I just sat there, I was like, okay, this is what I want to create. And somehow it worked.
Yeah. And I mean, look, if you are not your own biggest fan and your biggest critic in one, the creative process is not going to be very favorable to you, because
Mhm.
there's going to be a part where you're going to depend on external validation for things that you know as a creative that you should have covered before a piece goes out there. So, Masonwabe, let's talk about some of the future prospects. You say that you've taken more control of your approach to not just the business, but even the way that you do things. So, what are we looking at, and what can we look forward to going forward now, between now and whenever your next bomb drops, if I can say that? What could it be that we can look forward to?
I think for me, you know, I'm not trying to be deep or anything, but if you grow up in certain spaces, you only dream your life up to a certain point. You know, you don't see it beyond that, and that's not even because maybe let's say you're going to get killed or whatever. No, that's not the conversation. It's usually because you only dream as far as your knowledge, right?
Right.
So a lot of what I'm doing right now, I never thought I'd ever do. I believed in
Hmm.
myself, but I never thought I'd ever do most of what I'm doing. And it's not even from a point of thinking that I wasn't good enough. It's from a point of not knowing how possible things were. So now I am currently at a point in my life where I am finding new dreams. You know, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's
Yes.
it's it, it's there's a plan, but there's no plan. You know, like obviously there's a plan of understanding that the business stuff needs to go the right way. This is how it needs to go. You know, but I'm very open in the growth and the opportunities that come with me being where I am right now, and me hopefully wanting to get to another position, another place. So
Sure.
for me, the most important thing right now is just to make sure that I keep what I have. You know, obviously this is the legalities of it. You know that you understand that you own 100% of your work. This. But because of the path that you take, it opens more windows, more possibilities. So there's something that right now I might think that is impossible, right? But in the
Sure.
next 2 months, it might be
You,
something that I
you,
look at and I'm like,
you,
it's feasible. So I think for me,
you see the gap already. Yeah.
yeah. So I think for me, it's very important to have a conversation of understanding that it's okay to allow growth to be part of your journey, because also having this rigid plan of this is what I want to do is also, it can be quite difficult because there's something my mom loves saying, which is the difference between uh, a plan that God has for you and a plan that you have for yourself. Now, the beauty about these things is that when God's plan succeeds, you always find out that everything you wanted from your plan has actually been accomplished, just not at the right time. So for me, it's allowing those things to happen, to say, okay, I am put on this earth as a vessel of creativity. Because the reality is that most of what happens with my work, I don't think I understand it the way that everyone else who experiences my work understands. Because I've seen so many people
Okay.
who talk about how this touched them, this touched, and for me, it's like, okay, I'm just drawing or creating what feels natural to me, you know. But now you start realizing that it's a bigger thing, it's a bigger story, it's a bigger, you know. But yeah, so long story short, we're creating new dreams.
Let's tap into some of the experiences that you've encountered, because obviously this might help maybe a newer or an emerging artist, somebody a creative who needs that
Mhm.
kind of guidance. How important is intellectual property management in this space, and why and how would you advise a young artist or a young creative to approach anything when it comes to full ownership? Just touching on what you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
to keep control of what they work on and what they own.
Okay, sorry, just a bit. My
No
laptop charger,
problem.
my battery was
No
dying,
problem.
so I didn't just want to disappear. So, okay, I think we're good. So here's how I've grown to understand these things, right? Uh, and obviously my word is not law,
Mm,
but how I look at everything is you sit there, create. So what happened with me was that I watched a lot of people from the outside looking in. I'm I'm from the Eastern Cape. What's it do? I went to PE for school. There's not a lot happening in PE, you know. So when I met people, when I was watching what was happening, I had my own way of looking at it. So I thought everyone owned their intellectual property. I thought
hmm.
everyone owned the rights to their everything. So I'm coming in with the understanding that that's how it is. Only to find out that that's really not how it is. So that's why a lot of
Like
these people change
that's
their styles.
properly not how it is.
Yeah, so that's why a lot of people change their styles. They, you know, because that style is owned by that company now. So for me coming in, it was very important to go, okay, I am here telling my stories. It makes zero sense that my stories are owned by someone else who did not experience these things. So it was that simple. Like, this is outside of now going, oh, okay, this is what we need to trademark this. It was just me going, oh, okay. Every time I'd agree to a collab when everything was starting out, I'd always just simply say, look, as long as I own 100% to my work, of my work. So we'll do this. I won't accept a buyout fee. which is why I never at the beginning made the amount of money that a lot of people made, because a lot of people were bought out of their designs. So for me, I was like, okay, this is something that took me years to develop, you know. Now imagine I am creating something and then someone can just create. It's like, for example, let's say the rugs. If the company I'm working with decides that they want to create, they want to buy me out of the design. Say I take, usually they'll, when they buy you out, they'll go like what, 250,000 rand, which sounds like a lot of money, especially when you're in a point of desperation, you know.
Right.
But you need to look at this thing long term, because now when you're sitting there and 5, 6, 7 years from now, they're still creating those. You've kicked yourself out of the rug business at this point, you know.
And you don't have an in anymore.
Exactly, because now whatever you try create and charge at a premium, someone will just go get the cheaper version of this thing, because for them they're mass producing at this point. And for me, I'm
Oh yeah.
very particular with attention to detail. This is the amount of stuff we need to put out. This is what we need to do. I'm very, very, very particular with stuff like that. So now getting to a point where I am going to be doing a back and forth, you know, with someone. I'm like, hey, you shouldn't have, you know, or I'm sending out social media posts. Say, hey guys, please don't buy that product. If it's cheaper, people will buy it. You know? People don't
Yeah.
really owe you loyalty. That's the reality of this thing. So you need to do as much as you can to protect yourself. Like I said, this is not even on now getting to a point where I've trademarked my font, I've trademarked, you know, my print, but it's just a simple understanding that when you go, when you leave the room, you need to leave with more than what you came in with, but still with what you came in with. So for me,
Yes.
that was the simple. Like I said, I'm not gonna speak on, oh, this is what you need to do. You need to trade. No, I'm just gonna speak on the simplest term of it. So yo, just be careful of this and this and this and this and this and this, and that's it.
Who are some of the other talents that excite you? People we need to look out for, maybe that you might give us a heads up on. Some people that maybe you know about that we might not, but definitely on the rise, on the come up, and people that you're looking forward to still working with.
You know, this is gonna sound crazy, but for me, the most important thing that I had to do for myself, um, it's gonna be a bit of a digression, but I'll come back. What I started realizing was that if you are a black person, it's very hard for you to make it in this industry. So usually
Okay.
what happens is that when you see something that works, you want to jump onto that thing because you're, like I said, acting from a point of desperation, right? So for me, what I started realizing was, okay, I need to, it's like, for example, when like someone like a Tebe Makuku does a Dio collab, imagine you sit there and because they did a Dio collab, now you're running to go try get that Dio collab without understanding that that's not your path, right? So for me, the most important thing for me was to remove all the noise. So I'm not fully aware of what's happening in the creative industry unless it pops up on my
Right.
timeline. That's where I'm basically trying
Right.
to go. That I don't know who's the hottest guy. I don't know if I'm part of the hottest guys. You know, I just know what I do. I know what I do. I know where I'm trying to go with it, and that's all that matters to me. Like now, I've done my research in what the game was and what the game is and all of those things. You
Sure.
know, also for me, I don't come from an art background. So when I say that, I studied art and design in varsity, but I come from Etuju. Etuju, there's literally no one who understands what I do. And this now it's probably changed, you know. But when
Right.
I was younger, people didn't get what I was trying to do or what I was doing, right? So I remember there was a guy who used to call me Picasso when I was young. I didn't know who Picasso was until my first year of varsity, where we were
Wow.
being taught about Pablo. So for me, I had no art background. So I didn't know these people. I didn't know all of these things. So the only reference of art that I knew was myself. So for me, my favorite artist, like I always say this to people, I'm like, yo, my favorite artist of all time will always be me because I'm the one person I understand from point A to point Z and still trying to figure out. But I understand my artistic style. I'm the one who understands the natural progression and growth of what I do and how it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So for me, basically, long story short, I'm really not aware of what's happening in the industry like that. Like I said, because now I'm also trying to go outside and meet people. You know, I'm starting to see things and people, but also I'm in a very comfortable space of respecting what I do and understanding that other people's accomplishments don't mean that I am nothing or a nobody. My journey,
or that you're failing in any way, because it's not. It's
so for me,
yeah, no
that's
doubt.
really what it is.
So, people are watching, people are listening, and some are gonna catch this later as well, as it's always online. People who want to trace you, track you, and follow your journey. How do they do that? Where do they get in touch? Or which social platforms would best represent, the kind of status quo that you are at?
I think for me, Instagram is the most effective one. So on Instagram, my name and surname, Masonwabe Ntloko, Masonwabe Ntloko all together. On Twitter, just talk about wrestling and music. So I don't know if you want to follow that, and anime and comic books. So
Yeah,
my Twitter is really just stuff that I like. Every now and again, I'll talk about my work, but I don't really specifically talk about all of that. But Instagram
sure.
is the best one. Then Facebook, you don't really need to invite me on Facebook because it's really just like my family and people that I went with. So, but yeah, so Instagram and my website,
And it's
www,
Masonwabe Ntloko on all platforms.
everywhere. I'm a
All
simple
right,
human being. I have
I
quite a
like
unique
that.
name.
Your work is not as simple though. It has layers. It has layers and layers, and it's good to see. And it's complete works of art, and I like and appreciate that. And you can tell when someone has put their heart and soul into something, and I think that's something that you won't hear enough. But we'll tell you, because we have nothing to hold back from that. So, congratulations! Keep up the great work, brother. There are many, many, many people following in the footsteps that you guys have paved in the industry that you're in. You've had to carve it all the way from it, dude. Look where you are now. And, wherever you are walking, that grass is kind of laying down now. So there are people walking that same path because of the doors. You keep kicking those doors down because there are people looking forward to walking into the same kind of experiences that are waiting for them out there, thanks and courtesy of people like yourself doing great quality work that shows that we are capable of doing more than what we were told we can do. Well done and congratulations. Keep up the great work, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother.
Are extraterrestrial.